Choya sampo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe chinle yarngoda pege drolor zampe tse parache palden lame shabla luade Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishasane Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishas Uta Vardanya Shri Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishasan Uta Vardanya Shri Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishasane Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimo Nishasan Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Hakyake Akudandagi Lo Pakyake Sundandaki Anga Pakyake Tudandagi Ye chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi chishe gibe sonam ki drola pinchra sangye druparesho sangye chedan sogi chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi chishe gibe sonam drola pinchra sangye druparesho Sangye chedan tsoge chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparashu. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità e delle altre perfezioni possa io ottenere lo stato di Buddha per il beneficio di tutti gli esseri senzienti. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge unto enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Haye ke da ludan jinke rubonda da mi kenam dan ruwa kunge tanam chi sampa tamche ke to dagi cheten to tamche ke to dagi cheten to. Quando facciamo una pratica,
When we do
la sadhana,
the practice, the sadhana,
o in tibetano anche si usa il termine
we use
druptab,
druptap as
vuol
the
dire
term
metodo
in
di
Tibetan,
realizzazione.
which means a method of realization.
Ci sono diversi
There
aspetti.
are different
Ci
aspects.
sono, diciamo, principalmente due approcci principali
Mostly, there are
quando concepiamo una pratica.
the two main approaches.
Un aspetto
One
è un
aspect
approccio che è quello
is
anche molto
has
comune,
an approach that's very common,
importante,
important,
che è quello in cui diamo
where
priorità
we
a quello
give
che noi sentiamo.
priority to what we
Quindi ci mettiamo lì e recitiamo cose che la maggioranza di
what
noi non capisce.
we recite,
No?
what
Anche
we hear,
nelle
what we listen
visualizzazioni
to.
strane c'è chi
Even
riesce a visualizzare, chi non riesce a
we
visualizzare,
spend a
chi
lot of time
non
reciting in a
riesce a
language that we
vedere
don't
una visione
understand,
cosa.
or also
Però
visualizations that are not
comunque
very
sia
clear
uno
to
si
us. But
permette di
one
connettersi, di
allows
sperimentare.
oneself to feel, to
Ed
experience.
esiste un processo
And
di
there's a
generare
process
un
of
certo tipo di energia, un
generating a
certo
kind of
tipo di
energy, a
esperienza
kind of
interna. E
experience.
questo è molto
And this
importante
is
perché
very
questo crea un
important because
certo
this
gusto
creates a
anche.
kind of
Dice, ah, qua c'è
taste
qualcosa.
that where we feel, oh,
E c'è
there's
un altro
something
approccio che
here.
è
And then
quello
there's
nel
another
quale uno
approach
fa
where
in modo di capire
one
un po' quello che sta facendo.
tries to understand
Quindi
better what one's
piano piano
doing.
uno va,
And
vuole
one
comprendere,
wants to
vede,
understand,
diciamo,
wants to
usando un termine non molto
y-
appropriato, diciamo,
one
l'alta tecnologia che c'è nella sadhana.
one wants to
Che c'è
understand the quote unquote
veramente
high
qualcosa di
technology
incredibile, come
that's in the sadhana, which is
si
not
mettono
a
insieme
very
l'unione di
appropriate term to
recitazione,
use. But
visualizzazione,
if we
respirazione, queste cose come uno strumento per
so
fare
these
dei
are all
cambiamenti
tools, the
interni nostri.
recitation, the
Che questi
visualization,
cambiamenti
these are
avvengano in
tools
modo
for
consapevole in mente.
changes, to shape
E
our
io credo che
mind.
per noi la cosa
And
ideale
I
è
think that
riuscire
what's
a unire le
ideal
due cose.
for us is to
È
unite these
importante
two
avere il
things. It's
feeling,
important
avere
to
la
have that feeling to experience. I remember once Rinpoche gave a transmission of a mantra. We were in Nepal, and many people went to Rinpoche and said, "What's the meaning of this mantra?" And he said, when you go to the doctor and he gives you medicine, before taking the medicine, do you want to know all the ingredients of the medicine, or do you trust the doctor? You take the medicine, and then you see for yourselves if it works. If it works, then you keep taking it. If not, then stop taking it. Do the same thing with the mantra. If it works, keep using it. If not, let it go. So there is this aspect that we have sometimes where we want to understand. We want to understand because we want to have a kind of control over the experience. It's very important to let go and feel. It's said that when one chooses a path, before taking refuge, before choosing a path, one needs to analyze it, to really see frontwards, backwards. But once one has made that choice, one needs to follow that path. There are different examples given. One should practice the way one makes the stone soup, or should practice like the way the horns on the head grow. These are two stories that make reference. The first one is this lady who was the mother of a monk, and he comes home after many, many years from the monastery where he was studying, and he finds his mother quite old, who was having a hard time making ends meet. She was very poor, but she was okay. But he got home and he saw that there was no food, and asked her, what do you eat? And she said, "No, I make stone soup." And he said, what is that? And a lama came, and once he taught me how to make stone soup. He showed, and and she showed him, this is the mantra that I do, and this is how I make my stone soup. And then he had become quite learned, and he looked inside the kangyur. There are two volumes. There are two volumes of spells within all of the teachings of Buddhas. The Vajjanaki is part of this. So there are two enormous volumes. And I've never gone myself to see, but within the kangyur, there is this kind of spell to transform stone into soup. And I imagine maybe at the time of Buddha, there was someone who needed to go on retreat, didn't have the conditions, didn't have the means to sustain himself, and Buddha transmitted this spell of this stone soup. And so he went to see, and it really exists. And he saw that his mother was reciting it with the wrong pronunciation. And so he went to his mom and said, I found the text that makes reference to this stone soup, but you're not saying it right. The mantra is not like this. The mantra should be recited like this. And she said, oh, okay, I'll try to do differently. And then he left to go find other people. And he came back about a week later, and when he gets home, he saw that his mother was really weak. And he asked her, well, what's going on? She said, well, my soup is not working anymore. And he realized that when he showed her the correct pronunciation, actually, she lost faith in herself. So he planted a seed of doubt and uncertainty. And then he said, oh, well, let me see that again. And he pretends to look at the original text, and then he goes back to her and he said, you know what? I was the one who was mistaken. You were doing it correctly. You were doing it so well. do as you were doing before. And like that, she was able to make her stone soup. And so the example remains that when one practices, one should do it like making stone soup. This absolute faith in oneself. Instead, if I'm reciting, is this right? Is it wrong? Am I doing it right? Is it like this? Is it like that? Etc. Etc. This brings doubt, this uncertainty. Rinpoche reminded us that that doubt and uncertainty is the greatest enemy of the Tantra. On the other side, together with the certainty, Milarepa said, one of the greatest meditators in Tibet, he said, Tusam mepe. He said, meditating without having listening and understanding is like trying to scale a mountain, a cliff, with your um, hands closed. So we need to have faith, but we also need to follow the gradual process of understanding to deepen the practice, the meditation, and more go from the understanding to a deeper experience. So what I want to do today is to take the sadhana and understand a little bit what it's about. A first approach, quite superficial, so that we understand what we're doing better. Generally speaking, in the various practices within Vajrayana Buddhism, we can say that the practices are divided into 4 different categories. We have the frontal generation, where our visualization of the Buddha is in front of us, and we remain in our ordinary appearance, and we make requests of blessings. For example, many pujas, the puja of Tara, these are all frontal generations. And then there's also the self-generation, where the main point of the practice is to identify ourselves with the qualities of the Buddha and generate ourselves in that divinity. When we do the process of the 3 transformations, we eliminate our own ordinary appearance, and we generate a pure identity, and in this case, the identity of Kurukulle. And there's a very important characteristic here. I think one of the most important things to do, we said this many times when we were looking at the self-healing practice, really this ability we have, allowing ourselves to imagine what it would be like if we were a Buddha. Imagine ourselves as a Buddha, not in the external aspect, but the inner experience. In the self-generation, what we do mostly is we identify ourselves in a pure state, and we allow ourselves to come into contact and experience that state. It's like for a moment we allowed ourselves to dream, and we tell ourselves, if I were a Buddha, what would it be like? And then there's that self-generation is about becoming the Buddha, and then we simulate the sacred actions of a Buddha. Now that I've become a Buddha, what do I do? And so during the recitation of the mantra, that's the part where we simulate the holy actions of the Buddha. But this self-generation, a crucial point is allowing ourselves to experience, to dream, to imagine, if I were a Buddha, how would it be? And try to generate this experience inside, in addition to the external appearance. So when we look at when we do the self-generation of Kurukulle that we'll see later, it's not that I just visualize myself as Kurukulle, but inside I'm the same. No, I'm I am Kurukulle. It's not carnival. I am Kurukulle. Uh, my external aspect, but mostly my inner aspect reflects being Kurukulle. And this is the practice of self-generation, dagi in Tibetan. It's the most common of practices, one of the most common practices. Once one has created a certain familiarity with the self-generation, there's the practice called self-empowerment, self-initiation. It's where, in addition to the self-generation, there's the process of experiencing the four empowerments, like in self-healing, which is a practice to transform and purify our body and mind from a gross to a subtle and then very subtle level without getting into details. And these are the practices of self-initiation. It's important to understand that for us, the best way to understand well and to practice well the self-initiations is the practice of self-healing. It's complete and perfect. Then there's the self-initiation of Vajrayogini, Yamantaka, Tarachitamani, of all the practices of the highest yoga tantra. That's a different type of sadhana, where the main goal is to go from generation stage, we go to completion stage, where we take this state of Buddhahood from a gross to a very subtle level, not just on a conceptual level, but on a subtle level. And then the fourth type of practice is called Rabne, which is when we actually concede the empowerment to the divinity. These four types of practices are explained in a text by Lama Tsongkhapa called the Great Exposition of Tantra, Ramnechemo. I was able to study this text in Tibet, and these four types, these four practices are explained. And that last practice is a particular process where offerings are made to the divinity. We make offerings to the divinities, and we regenerate all the qualities. And here in July, we'll have 5 days of Ranenchemo for this practice. Normally it's done for 3 days. Maximum we'll do it for 5 days in July, based on the sadhana of Yamantaka. But this is another type of practice. The most common type of sadhana that exists is the frontal generation and the self-generation. Afterwards, the self-initiation or the initiation to the divinity requires a certain amount of experience and preparation. There are things that are not really done publicly. There are some rules that are applied. They're indicative. It's said that a self-initiation shouldn't be done if one hasn't done a retreat of 100,000 mantras. It's not that once you've done 100,000 mantras, there's like a green button that goes off. Ding, now you can do this. It's an indication that's given to say that before you deepen your understanding of the practice, you need to create familiarity with it. And as human beings, I don't know why it is that we like more advanced things. We want to do the maximum when instead there's some very, very basic things that we should look at first. So let's look at the practice that we have to do during the retreat, which is the self-generation. once we understand the self-generation practice well, like the one of Kurukulle or Yamataka, we see that the structure of the sadhana is always the same. Well, you know, a detail here, a detail there changes, but the structure itself is always the same. And one of the most important things to me is understanding the structure. And when we have the structure, at that point we say, okay, now we're doing this. After this, there will be that. Even if one doesn't understand word for word what is being recited, because even if one was reciting in their own language, it would be hard with the mind to follow the visualization. The recitation is very quick, but this is my way of practicing. I've seen for me that the key is understanding the passages. If we have clarity on the various passages, we know, okay, now we're doing this. So where is my mind directed? There. And then little by little, one deepens his understanding. But we start from a more generic understanding to get to a more detailed understanding. If I remember well, it was this course of the end of the year where we did the preliminary practices. No, I'm confused. I'm confused with the dates. 2 years ago? No, it wasn't 2 years ago. Really? Anyway, I confuse the when and the where. But whatever it is, the first part of the sadhana are the preliminary practices, which we're not going to get into now, because otherwise we would do only that. The preliminary practices are important. But in this moment, we are going directly to the main practice, the actual practice. And then the preliminary practices can be done in many different ways. There are also preliminary practices dedicated only to the retreat. So let's take the sadhana in our hands and let's look at it. First of all, so the method of realization of the Venerable Lady Kurukulle, called the Garland of Utpala Lotuses. This sadhana, many years ago, Rinpoche and Rinpoche told me to do the Kurukulle retreat. I said, okay. There are two ways to do the retreat. I do it completely alone, or if other people like to participate, okay. Anyway, it's 4 sessions a day, etc. And we begin and we end. Okay. He said other people can participate. And it was in that occasion that Rinpoche put this sadhana together. This sadhana comes from different sadhanas of Kurukulle. So he took a little bit here and a little bit there. I mean, the structure is always the same, but the emphasis that's given and the words that are added, these are things that Rinpoche himself added in that occasion. Let's see. So let's go quickly through the main titles, headers. The first part of the sadhana has to do with what is actually the daily practices. They're not even preliminary to the retreat. They're practices that ideally one should do every day. So when we do a retreat, one should do it even more. So the mantra of multiplication, the blessing of the mala, the taking of refuge, and then there's the blessing of oneself, the speech blessing. These practices, the self-blessing and the speech blessing, just read the translation. It's very clear. There's not much to explain. And these practices that go up to page 14, 15, these are the practices that actually these are the ones we do in the morning before starting the first session. So where we bless our body, speech, and mind, and then speech specifically. And with this is the first part, and then right away there's another practice that we can do daily at the basis, the foundation of every other practice is the practice of Guru Yoga here. That's why we have the prayer request to the root Guru. First to Captain Chögyam Rinpoche, then Lama Michel Rinpoche, and then the method to develop the inner Guru, these requests for blessings. And this is concluded with the meditation requesting to become one nature with the Guru. And this is the end of page 23. This is the practice of Guru Yoga. So more than preliminaries, these are practices that are done ideally every day. And together with this, we do also Guru Yoga. So people ask, is there a practice I can do every day to so I would say from the beginning of the sadhana to the page 23, you do the blessing of body, speech, and mind. You generate your motivation. You bless your speech. You and then you do the practice of Guru Yoga. And then we conclude this part. This is not part of the actual sadhana of Kurukulle. It's a practice. Let's say it's a preliminary to the preliminaries. Then, it's at this point, if you want, you can do the Guru Yoga in 6 sessions or Guru Puja. Because the Guru Puja is like mostly has to do with the preliminaries. So one can do preliminaries in a brief way, medium way, or a long way, extensive way. So if you want to add the Guru Puja, it should be done here. Now, page 24. And we begin the actual sadhana. We begin with the taking of refuge and the generation of bodhicitta. Maybe someone asks, well, but I already generated my motivation. I took refuge in the Guru Puja. Why do I need to repeat it? Mostly because there are 3 levels of practice. What we recite, what we visualize, and the states of consciousness that we should generate. And when with the taking of refuge and the generating of bodhicitta, I don't think that most of us are able to generate the right state of consciousness simply by reciting Sangye Chudan Soke Chunamla. And given that this is extremely important, they need to be repeated again and again. So we finished a part of the preliminaries. We're about to begin the sadhanas, and so we repeat again. Technically speaking, one could go directly to page 28. Technically speaking, one wouldn't need to repeat the taking of refuge and the generation of the bodhicitta and the 7 limitless. But since we want to generate love for ourselves, love for others, it's fundamental to repeat this again and again. And Rinpoche himself, he wanted to add here once again the taking of refuge. The actual sadhana of Kurukulle begins with the special mind generation, but it means it's the generation of the motivation. Why am I doing this sadhana? Why am I doing this practice? The translation says, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, my mothers, I shall attain the state of a complete Buddha. For this purpose, I shall practice the stages of the meditation and the recitation of the Venerable Lady Kurukulle. Or rather, why am I doing the sadhana of Kurukulle? Because I want to reach the state of Buddhahood to benefit beings. This is when we remind ourselves once again why we're doing what we're doing. Now let's get into the sadhana of Kurukulle more specifically. That first part is the request of the blessings of the lineage. So every verse, these are the names of the masters who handed down this practice. So we invoke the various masters of the lineage, and we ask them for their blessing so that we too can realize this practice just like they did in the past. After this is the part where we make these requests for blessings, and at the end of each line, Rinpoche added something that was added as an instruction, and he wrote it as a recitation. Was in page 35. So at the very end of this, it says, She Solwa. And these are words that Rinpoche added. Thus, having made humble requests in this way, from the bodies of the gurus, spring forth continuously immeasurable light rays and nectars which enter the crown of my head. My whole body is filled. All negativities and obscurations, sicknesses and spirits, mental problems are purified. Long life, merit, prosperity, and well-being increase. The gurus are pleased, and one by one, from the furthest one to the nearest, they dissolve into me. So this is the description of the visualization. After this, to begin, we ask for the blessings, and then we do the Vajrasattva mantra to create the basis to be able to generate the qualities of a Buddha, to then do the self-generation. So there's the practice of Vajrasattva. Can be a simple recitation, or with the complete visualization, which now we're not going to get into details. And Rinpoche added the purification of the elements of the 5 chakras, and also the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 Great Mothers, and also the mantra of interdependence. So let's say up to here, we're in the preparatory stage of the self-generation. So we have preliminary practices of Guru Yoga, then within there's a generation of the motivation. If we remember the preliminary practices, remember they're divided into 3 parts. We generate the correct motivation, we accumulate merits and purify negativities, and then we ask for and receive blessings. This is how the preliminary practices are structured. After this, we begin the part that before doing the actual self-generation, we need to generate bliss and emptiness, and the purification of the place where we find ourselves, and the purification of the offerings as well. So, and also the part of the accumulation of merit. Just a minute. Let's create the macro titles here, the macro categories. So what page are we on? Page 52. We actually begin the part of self-generation as Kurukulle. That goes until page 64. So a main part is the self-generation. But before that, what should we do? We need to accumulate merit, purify our own negativities, so that we have the basis, the energetic basis that is necessary to actually make this transformation. So this self-initiation is based on the 3 transformations, and to do the 3 transformations, we need to purify our negativities and accumulate merit and generate bliss. These are important parts. So before beginning the self-generation, just a minute. So let's just make the big categories. So we have the preliminaries, where we ask, that concludes with the mantra of Vajrasattva, the requesting of blessings of the lineage, after the blessings of lineage. And then on page 40, we start, that first part is the preparation for the self-initiation that goes until page 52. And so from 52 actually begins the self-generation. And then page 64 it's the simulating Buddhahood with the recitation of the mantra. And then on page 72, we go to the part of making offerings of tormas and offerings to obtain realizations. So just as the torma offerings, that goes page 96, if I remember well. To page 96. So the sadhana is made, these large titles. We have the preparation of self-generation, where we accumulate merit, we purify, and we accumulate merit and generate bliss. Then we have the actual self-generation as Kurukulle. Then we have the recitation of the mantra, the simulation, let's say, of the Buddhahood. After that, there's the torma offering and the final conclusion. How many parts do we have? We have the preparation for the self-generation itself, the recitation of the mantra, the torma offerings, and conclusion. 5 steps. And we add also the preliminary parts and the Guru Yoga previous to that. So we have these 5 steps. Preparation to the self-generation, the actual self-generation, mantra recitation, torma offering, and dissolution and conclusion. Okay, are you following? So now let's look at each one of these steps and see what they're made of. So the preparation for the self-generation is made up of, it begins with the instantaneous self-generation. And this word instantaneous, it sounds a little strange. When I think of like instantaneous, I think about like ready-made soup or something. I don't know why that word takes me to that. Anyway, why do we make an instantaneous self-generation? It's not the moment where we stop to meditate on the death process and the 3 transformation. No, in an instant, like a fish that jumps out of water, in an instant, one arises in the aspect as Kurukulle, as a divinity, in this case Kurukulle. Why do we need to make this instantaneous self-generation? Because at this moment of the practice, we do the purification of the transformation of the inner offering and external offerings. And to do this transformation, one needs to transcend one's own ordinary identity. That's why we do this quick self-generation. Let's remember that one of the essence of the practice is being able to again and again connect with the state of Buddhahood and allow ourselves to dream, to imagine, to experience what it would be like if I were a Buddha. This inner experience more than the external experience. And this is repeated in the sadhana from Guru Yoga and the absorption of our Guru. Now here with the instantaneous self-generation, and then as we go along with the practice, the next part that's called the blessing of the Dorje and the bell is an extra that Lama Ganchen added to this sadhana. Normally, most sadhanas of self-generation, one doesn't need to do this part. But it's also a really important part of the practice. So if one wanted, if one had less time, the blessing of the Dorje and the bell can be omitted. The sadhana would remain complete even without this part. It's just giving emphasis to this part. What does that mean to bless the Dorje and the bell? The Dorje and the bell exist on two types. There's the Dorje and the bell of the meaning and of the representation. So these are the Dorje and the bell of representation. This object called Dorje or Vajra, and this object called bell. Actually, what are these objects? They're a representation of what we need to generate as a basis during the entire practice, which is method. The Dorje represents love and compassion in a state of bliss. So it represents two things, the Vajra, both the basis of love and compassion that we should generate at the beginning of the sadhana and maintain that line throughout the entire sadhana, and also the state of bliss, the inner joy that is non-conceptual. This is represented with the method. The bell, it represents wisdom, the wisdom understood as the correct view of reality, in a deep state of harmony with oneself and with everything. It's a non-conceptual experience of interdependence and of the non-inherent existence of all. And one should not abandon these two minds throughout the entire practice. That's why we always have the Dorje and the bell. When we make offerings, for example, why do we always keep the Dorje and the bell in our hands? So that we have, so that the offering should be made based on love and compassion, with a blissful mind united with the correct view of reality, emptiness. So now when we talk about how do we recite, the way to recite, here, those who want to do this sadhana, I invite you to actually get a Dorje and a bell. It's important to have one as a material reminder of something that is fundamental for our path, also representing the male and female energy. So here it says Dorje tabdan jibune sherabte dene da dödam pechanchub ki semki rashino. The Vajra is method and the bell is exalted wisdom. Both is the nature of the ultimate mind of enlightenment. The union of both represents Buddhahood. This is what is recited here. At this point, we do the mantra Om Sarvatathagata Siddhi Vajra Samayashchita Esam. You take the dorje with your right hand and you put it to your heart. Om Vajraganda Hum. At that moment, you take the bell with your left hand and rest it on your left hip. This is the representing the image of Vajrasattva. So as we write this part, it says Vajrasattva and so on, be pleased with me. Brandishing the Vajra elegantly symbolizes that sentient beings are free of delusions. Holding the Vajra is an expansion of the Dharma of liberation. So in this moment, we keep the Vajra we held in front of us, showing that this union of method and wisdom is the basis of the path, and it's what can bring all beings outside the cycle of suffering. So one keeps the dorje up in front, and then we do the other mantra, and you play the bell. Vajradhamita Paranita. The description says you should ring the bell, and the actual clapper of the bell should go in the 8 directions. It's not that easy, and if you try to do it, it maybe makes a big mess. So there's no need now to do that. In another moment, we can actually have a little lesson on how to play the bell, just very quickly. In this case, we take them both, but generally, during the sadhana, when we use the Vajra and the bell, a rule, it's not a fixed rule, but it's a kind of good rules of conduct. Let's say with the right hand you take the dorje, and then with the same hand you take the bell, and then you bring it to your left hand. So first you take it, you hold the bell like this with the middle finger and the ring finger, and then you bring it towards yourself. If you're doing the practice, for example, and you grab it with your hands, nothing happens, but it's not very elegant. Let's say it's not very respectful. So remembering their meaning of method, bliss, and compassion, together with emptiness. Remember that bliss and compassion is what realizes emptiness, and then so with bliss and compassion we gather up the emptiness, the wisdom, and so when we play the bell at our heart chakra, it should be at our heart chakra because it's said that it's very connected to the heart chakra, and we shouldn't be moving our arms up and down, actually without even moving our wrists. And then at the end, one does it very quickly, and you can train a little bit in doing this, and this is the training you can do. So in the right hand, like a pistol, and your left hand, like you do like this, like a heavy metal gesture, and so we open up, and then we have the gun. So our left hand is in front, and you unite your thumb and your index finger, and then you unite the 2 fingers in the middle together. So our gun goes in forward, and then the other one goes back, and then you turn it, and the objective is to do like this, as I'm doing. the more you train in this movement, this is the movement you should do for the bell and the damaro, because when you play the damaro, you don't play with your whole arm. You play it without moving your wrist. So to train in that, one technique is, let me do it slowly. So I have my index finger with my thumb. They unite. The thumb and the index finger are above, and then they unite. Without moving your wrists. So the wrist should stay still. It's not that you should be doing like this. And now I'm exaggerating a little bit, but so I mean, on one hand, it's not important, but it is important. If no one teaches you, if you're never taught, how can you be expected to play the instruments well? I did this exercise a lot. It's something that really helps if you really want to play the bell and the damaro well. You should do this, because afterwards, when they're played together, one takes the dorje method, takes the bell wisdom, and then when we play the damaro, one needs to take the damaro. Usually the dorje is like this, and this might be difficult, because then when you have to play the damaro, the dorje actually touches the damaro. But Geshe Tupten Rinchen taught me that when you're going to take your damaro, with your thumb, you push your dorje down, so it stays like this. So your hand is more free for the damaro, and then the damaro, you keep the lower part between your index finger and resting a little bit on that index finger and the middle finger, with just a little bit of pressure. The damaro should be played at the height of one's navel, representing the fire of the tumo, and that's why we use the damaro exclusively for practices related to Mother Tantra. For example, because they give emphasis to that inner fire, the Kundalini energy. A practice like Gu Samadra doesn't use the damaro, because it's not that easy to play the damaro at the height of your navel. You need some experience, but ideally this is how you should do it. So when we begin with the damaro, we make a quick movement with the hand, even at the end, but while you're playing, it should be constant. Not all do that, but this, let's say, is the best way to practice it. These are the best indications for playing. And in this moment of the practice, we've given the blessings of the dorje and the bell. What does it mean to bless them? It means remembering their real meaning. One remembers that the dorje, that love and compassion and bliss, and the bell is wisdom. Having done that, then we bless the inner offering. The blessing of the inner offering, the scope is to generate bliss. And here we could spend hours and days talking about inner offering. But those who know self-healing well, and most of you do, when there's the purification of the elements, what happens? The wind blows within the central channel, the fire grows, the heat heats up, the water heats up, evaporates towards the crown where it condenses, melting the white bodhicitta, coming down throughout the entire body, generating bodhicitta, bliss. Melting the white bodhicitta and generating bliss. So this is all represented here with it, and there are these syllables. In this case, we have go, ku, da, ha, na, and vira, shuma, mu. And these are actually the syllables that represent the elements and the 5 aggregates. So the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 Great Mothers, body, mind, elements, that represent, in this case, to purify and transform body and mind together with our elements and developing an inner state of great bliss. And that's why when we do the blessing of the inner offering, we have this object that represents the inner offering. This object is called the inner offering. It represents the transformation of the body and mind in a pure state. And in this moment of the practice, what we do simply, we open it up. We just open it up. Normally, you just turn it, and you leave it slightly open. Sort of practical. If we have a small container instead, and inside there are these pills, and if you want to do this practice with a certain constancy, you can have these pills. They're called the pills of the inner offering that are done in a very particular way. Very, very long meditations done on the inner offering to create these pills. And it's said that the great masters like Panchen Chukye Gyatsen, they wouldn't stop their meditation until the smoke would actually come out of these pills. And there's a lineage to these pills that's very interesting. We make these pills in Nepal, but within the new pill, there's a little bit of previous pills that were made. And so there's a connection that's given from one generation to the next. Within the inner offering pills, there's actually inside their pills, the inner offering pills of great masters, even of Panchen Losang Chukye Gyatsen and other great masters. So there is this lineage, this continuity that exists in the inner offering pills. And one can take a small container and one puts a liquid, and there's no fixed rule. Has to be something that sometimes people use alcohol because over time it doesn't go bad. So alcohol is used, but it's possible you can use black tea. But if you can do black tea, but so that it evaporates less, so that it doesn't evaporate quickly or doesn't go bad. Then you can use rainwater if you're using black tea for your inner offering. But what's important, it's a substance that represents generating this inner state of bliss. Without getting into too many details, in the practice of Kurukulle, specifically at the end, we use this mantra Om Ahum Ha Hori, which is a particular mantra, and this is how you do it. When you do Om Ahum Ha Hori, you start with your right hand, and your thumb on the inside is like the Vajra fist, and so the tip of your thumb touches the base of your ring finger, and at the height of your chest. You put your hand like this, and then A is the opposite. Om Ahum. Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri. Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri. Let me see how to explain this. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. This is easy up to here. Then Ha with your palms up. Ho Ri. So when you do Ho, you take the two pinkies, sorry, your two ring fingers, and they cross one on top of the other. So Om Ahum Ha Ho. And then after, the middle fingers come inside and they touch the thumbs. And if you look from above, it looks like the eyes of a Garuda. It's called the Garuda eye. So Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri. Om Ahum Ha Ho. So Ho, we're crossing like this, and then Ahum Ho Ha Ri, we unite like this. So we're really just looking at the first level of the sadhana, how to recite Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri. Normally, you can do it quickly, so it's important to do it a few times slowly, so that when you have to do it quickly, you can do it quickly. Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri, Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri, Om Ahum Ho Ri, Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri, Om Ahum Ha Ho Ri. Okay. So with this, we have the blessing of the inner offering. And the objective here, I repeat, is to generate bliss. Then we move on to external offerings. When we do the mantra Om Vajragasmari Soha, it's important to remember that every time you see Vajra, the Tibetan way to pronounce it is, for Tibetans, is Bensa. So wherever it's written Vajra, it might be recited as Bensa. So Vajra becomes Bensa. It's a Tibetan way of reciting Vajra. But since we come from a Tibetan lineage and all our masters have recited Bensa, we should do as the same. I mean, Lama Ganchen didn't say Om Vajragasmari Soha. He said Om Benzagasmari Soha. So Om Benzagasmari Soha, Om Vajragasmari Soha. In this case, you see this little little drawing of the Kapala. So with the left hand, you take the ring finger. That's the channel of bliss. It touches inside the inner offering. From the height of the heart, ideally, one sprinkles so you sprinkle a little bit of the liquid from the inner offering from the height of the heart. And in this moment, we should visualize that there are these divinities that take away interferences. Gasmari are these beings. They go towards the offerings and they take away any kind of negativity that can be surrounding these offerings. And when we do the mantra Om Sabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sabhava Shuddho Ham Tompani Tu Gyur, just see if I should get into details or not, just in a very, very few words. What dissolves into emptiness? It's not that the offerings are there and at a certain point they disappear. What happens is we take away from the offerings this grasping intrinsic existence of the offerings. In other words, when we see anything, it appears to us as if it existed in an independent, objective way, inherent way. And so this way, we are deconstructing that mind that grasps at the object's appearance. But if so, and so actually, what disappears is not the offering, but the perception of inherent existence of the offering, given that it's interdependent, that it lacks an objective existence, what we see, it arises as something completely pure. It's as if we somehow took it away, and then we give it a new name, attributing a new meaning to that object that's in front of us, whether it's visualized or actually arranged in front of us. In these practices, originally, what there is to recite is just the mantra, but all this part in Tibetan is the description of the visualization. If you never read the visualization, then you don't actually do it. Originally, they recited much less, and here we bless the various external offerings. There is 7 types of offerings. So we have 2 types of water, argam, water for drinking, padyam, water for washing feet, pushpe, flowers, dupe, incense, aloke, light, gende is perfume, niwide, food, shapta, music. When we do the blessing, we don't open and close. Normally, when we make offerings at the beginning, we snap our fingers with our left hand outside, and we visualize that our offering deities manifest from our heart, and they bring the offerings. And at the end, after having made the various offerings, we close. There's this absorption back at our heart. But now we're blessing the offerings, and so we do Om Argam Padyam Pushpe Dupe Aloke Gende Niwide Shapta Ahum. Okay? And there are 2 ways to recite. The one that is written and then the oral way. If we read, it says Om Argam. If we read it, it says Om Argam Ahum, Om Padyam Ahum, Om Pushpe Ahum, Om Dupe Ahum, etc. And then the way we recite it, we do Om at the beginning and the Ahum at the end. Om Argam Padyam Pushpe Dupe Aloke Gende Niwide Shapta Ahum. In reality, it's a way to summarize, but the text is written as we have it here, but the way we recite it traditionally, we say Om, we recite Om at the beginning and the Ahum at the end. I say it because maybe if you're reciting slowly, you can do it together, but if you're doing it quickly, and Geshe-la's there, they do it differently. So we do Om at the beginning and the Ahum at the end. Om Ahum represents the blessings of every offering. Om eliminates every negativity. Sorry, the Hum eliminates every negativity of form, color, or smell. The Ah transforms it to nectar, and the Om the Om multiplies. So after having done this preparation, we go to this specific part of accumulating merit. To accumulate merits, there are 2 merit fields, holy beings and sentient beings. So the first thing that we should do is to invite the holy beings So from the red syllable Ri, light rays radiate, as Venerable Vajrayogini, Kurukulle, sorry, light rays radiate. From the southern directions, invoke the Venerable Lady Kurukulle with Lama Amitabha adorning the crown of her head. So we invite the wisdom beings to come here. They come together with the assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Lotus Dakinis, and their retinas, who appear in the space in front. Om Vajrasamaya. So we're inviting, we're requesting the presence, or invoking. So at that point, we play the bell and the damaro as we invite them, and then we invite them with all. And then we pay homage to those we've invited. Sapariware means so Namo Guru Bhye, Namo Shri Kurukulle Sapariware. Sapariware is the entourage. And then we do On Shri Kurukulle Sapariware Argam Padyam Pushpe Dupe Aloke. And Pratishaye Soha. You can say Pratishaye Soha or Pratishaye. And then when we do the inner offering, Om Shri Kurukulle Sapariware Oma Ahum. And remember, when we do the inner offering, we touch the ring finger inside the actual kapala, the liquid, and sprinkle it. And then at this point, we take refuge. After having made offerings and prostrations, we connect again with Guru Buddha. And in this part, we say, Koncho sun la da kyapshi, in Buddha Dharma Sangha, I take refuge. Dipa tamche susosha. I eliminate every negativity. I rejoice for all the virtues of sacred beings and sentient beings. Sangye chanchu yike sun, and I take the commitment to reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. And this to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I go for refuge until enlightenment, in order to fulfill the purpose of myself and others. I shall generate the mind of enlightenment, the mind of love and compassion towards others. Having generated the mind of supreme enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings to be my guests. Remember what Rinpoche would often say, the real function of a lama, of a practitioner, is to be at the service of beings. So it's exactly that. I shall invite all sentient beings to be my guests. May I take care of all beings and engage in the pleasing, supreme actions of enlightenment. May I become a Buddha for the benefit of all migrators, all sentient beings, migrators. So we're reinforcing love, compassion, and why we want to do this practice. We reinforce this feeling of love towards all beings, and we generate the 7 limitless meditations: love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and so forth. After that, we conclude the part of accumulating merits and purification. If we wanted at this point to make it longer, we could, but in essence, we make offerings, prostrations, we admit our negativities, we rejoice. After that, we request the blessings. We ask Guru Buddha, please stay with us along our path, and we take the commitment to dedicate what we're doing to great enlightenment for all beings. At this point, we conclude this part of preparation to the great, to the self-generation. So we purified inner offerings, external offerings. We invited Guru, Buddha, Kurukulle, and the holy beings to come here. We made prostrations. We made offerings. We purified our negativities. We in the other 7 limbs, and we reinforced our commitment to reach Buddhahood. And here we conclude that first part. At this point, the bridge between the self-generation is this verse. It's very important. It says, So shingnam o marponam gyurte ralatim no chutam. The field of merit dissolves into me in the aspect of rays of red light. So Guru, Buddha, Kurukulle, together with all the holy beings that are generated in front of me, devolve into light. And this light comes towards me, enters into our forehead, fills up our body completely, and we gradually dissolve into light. This light expands from our heart and the entire universe, throughout our body into the entire universe. There's nothing other than a great full light. Someone will remember that in the preliminary practices of self-healing, there's a moment where, after having done generation of bodhicitta, Guru Buddha dissolves into light, dissolves into our forehead, and fills up our entire body, expands throughout our entire body into a whole universe. It's the exact same thing. So this light fills up our central channel and expands throughout our entire body and throughout the entire universe. Om Shunyata Janavaja Sobawa Atma Koham. In this moment, we recite this mantra, which means Om Shunyata Jnana, the wisdom that realizes the lack of inherent existence. Shunyata, lack of inherent existence, Jnana, wisdom. Vajra Sobawa Atma Koham. Vajra, inseparable, Sobawa, nature. Atma Koham, I am. So I am the non-dual state of wisdom that realizes the lack of inherent existence. It's a little bit complex to go into details now, but what we do at this moment is we remember that everything that exists in an interdependent way. Nothing exists in an autonomous, objective, independent way, but exclusively in an interdependent way. So even if reality appears to us as if it existed independently, autonomously, it's not like that. And so we've generated first the inner offerings, a sense of bliss, and with that state of joy and bliss, we imagine that everything dissolves. And at this moment, personally for me, when Guru Buddha dissolves into light and fills up our bodies, the inner feeling, I fill myself up with this light, the essence of Guru Buddha. It generates an inner feeling of bliss, and this feeling of being loved, of being, receiving this energy fully throughout our entire body, the essence of Guru Buddha himself. This state of bliss reminds us that everything lacks inherent existence. And getting into more details, this is the moment where it's the first of the 3 transformations where we transform death into Dharmakaya. Now the sadhana doesn't put emphasis on this part, and we're not going to either, but this is where we disconnect ourselves from our own so-called ordinary identity to then really be able to identify ourselves with the state of identity of Buddhahood. Otherwise, a part of the self-generation is almost like dress up, where I dress up like Kurukulle for carnival. It's not it's not me. It's not myself that I identify myself as Kurukulle. No, I am Kurukulle. But to do that, that ordinary aspect I have of myself needs to die. So we allow ourselves, metaphorically speaking, to die, and we simulate the process of death. And this process, the simulation of death, and here we need to meditate on the earth that dissolves into water, water into fire, fire into wind, wind into consciousness, and the white vision, red vision, black near attainment. But without getting into details, simply everything dissolves into light. There's nothing other than an infinite, empty brightness. There's no appearance. There's no longer you or me or here or there. There's nothing other than this infinite, luminous light. Rashim Meba, that comes, the appearance is of emptiness. So even this luminous void doesn't exist objectively. It is also lacking inherent existence. I, as the observer of this void, I am in a state of profound bliss. The one who experiences this luminous void is the mind of bliss. And I remember my divine pride. I am this non-dual union of bliss and emptiness. And wherever there's this void, there's bliss. And wherever there's bliss, there is this lack of inherent existence. And wherever there's one, there is the other. And this is the meditation where one needs to simulate the very subtle. That we've talked about this in other occasions. We've talked about this at great lengths. So this is the time in the practice where there are different sadhanas. When we get to this point of the sadhana, it says, now meditate. When you get tired in meditating, then you will go along, you will move forward. So when one, in these days, we'll give a little bit more emphasis here. Sometimes it's important to stop and visualize and let go of this attachment of our ordinary aspect, identity. Allow ourselves to simulate the process of death, and from this infinite luminous void, gradually everything arises. So then so now we're going to do the generation of the protection mandala. If you see in the cover of the sadhana, you see that around, outside the mandala, if you look well, it's fire. There's fire. It's a multicolored fire. These are called the fire of the five wisdoms that go protect the mandala, that represents the wisdoms of the five Dhyani Buddhas. And here in the description, it says there rises the Vajraground, the fence of Tanmagam, and beyond that is the circle of multicolored wisdom fire. So we imagine there's a beautiful environment, mountains, forests, and around there's this circle of fire that protects. And within the protection mandala, there are the 8 great cremation grounds. And outside there, So you have the fire protection, and then you have the 8 charnel grounds that represent renunciation, renouncing to suffering and the causes of suffering. And then gradually we make the generation of the mandala. There's something a little particular here, and you might say why. It says at the center from the syllable Ram appears a solar disk. On the solar disk there's a male corpse. You might be asking, why is there a male corpse? So it, among other things, Kurukulle represents, she's stepping on selfishness, this obsession with self-gratification, with the wrong view of self, this view that one exists independently, autonomously. I mean, our mind is always dual. Okay, we're thinking, why is a male? Why? No, let's not get into this. We've already gotten rid of our identity, our ordinary identity. So this male corpse represents our own ego, the selfishness, and the grasping to an identity that is ordinary understood as being objective and independent. And on top of this arises my mind in the form of the red syllable ri. But on top of that then comes the Kurukulle. So here we have an image here, this tanka done by Duccio, that is actually the tanka that can be found in Rinpoche's room. And so we have the possibility to have we have this image that the Rinpoche had in his room. We have this great luck to multiply this image. So here's the entire description of Kurukulle, and then we can look at all the details of the symbolism. But one of the what's important is that when we visualize Kurukulle, we visualize these specifics, and in the self-generation, through all of these visualizations, imagining, we're training our mind. We're training our mind to keep. We're training our mind in concentration. So in this process of visualizing these details, actually, it's a way to train our mind to have more concentration. And as we visualize all of this, we should try to keep that initial state of bliss that realizes the lack of inherent existence. So we should maintain that state of joy. Paponka Rinpoche, the master of Kyabshe Chichen Dorje Chang, the master of Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, said that when one is at the beginning of a practice to generate bliss, what one should do is remember a moment where one felt great pleasure. Try to go back in your memory to find a moment of non-conceptual great joy, something physical, non-conceptual, something that possibly something that was overwhelming, that it just engulfed the mind and body in every aspect. Try to remember that, and we try to remember that great bliss and bring that experience here. And in that state, we see that reality appears to us as if it were objectively existence, but it's not. So in this state, this union of bliss and emptiness, we should continue the entire practice. So we should sometimes we should remind ourselves about this feeling of joy, where everything that we perceive, our bodies in our body in the aspect of Kurukulle, the beings that we perceive, everything takes us back to that, takes us to that joy, or is with the basis of that joy, because everything is of inherent, everything lacks inherent existence. So we're taking from a conceptual level to a non-conceptual level the correct view of reality. Of course, now we're not going to go into details. In this state, we visualize ourselves in the aspect of Kurukulle. I mean, why are there so many details to visualize? Because this helps us train our mind in generating concentration, because the more we're able to visualize the details, the more we're able to direct our mind. Well, people might say, someone can come to me, someone might say, Lama, I'm not able to visualize. I don't think that there's anyone who's not able to visualize. Just do the exercise. See if you're able to visualize a pizza. You sit. It seems like a simple exercise, seems banal, but you you sit down and you breathe. Are you able to imagine the pizza in front of you? See how big it is. Visualize the ingredients. I would love a pizza with mozzarella, but I can't. So we imagine the tomato paste and the crust that is it's a little crunchier. It's a little bit inside, and towards the middle is softer. And then we imagine the smells and the actual heat. I mean, we can do that. I mean, this is visualizing. The difference is that we're much more used to visualizing a pizza than visualizing Kurukulle, and this makes all the difference. That's why we need to familiarize ourselves. But remember that visualizing is imagining. So our attention is no longer towards the external world, but in an imaginary world. We're imagining that we are Kurukulle in every aspect. And this helps us train our mind in concentration, which is absolutely fundamental for what's called the completion stage, because to be able to generate and direct the subtle energy winds of prana, this is all developed through these processes of visualization. So we visualize ourselves perfectly like Kurukulle, and inside we imagine being Kurukulle, a deep state of peace, of joy, of love, of harmony. We are Buddha, and we try to allow ourselves to be, and to make this experience deeper, more real. We need 2 more steps. Once we've finished imagining ourselves as Kurukulle, we are the Samaya Sattva. We are the commitment being. Some will remember when we talked about the preliminary practices, when we visualize Buddha in front of us in the merit field, it's called the commitment beings, Samaya Sattva, and we invite the wisdom being. So where is the commitment being? We are the commitment being. We are visualized. We are visualized as Kurukulle. We are the Samaya Sattva. We are the commitment being. We are the bridge that is going to unite us with the holy beings. At this point, normally, what we do when we learn a sadhana, and I did this for many years, you take paper and pen and you write down, the sadhanas in Tibetan, there's no layout like this with the bold and the headings. In a Tibetan pecha sadhana, one needs to actually put down the symbols of where you should take the dorje, so here I've done it for you. So here, dorje and the bell, it means to pick it up. So here where it says kar hum nompo, you pick up the dorje and the bell. And then you play. And then you play the bell and the damaro, which means from our hearts in the aspects of Kurukulle, from the Riyat, our hearts, we invoke the light rays and nectars emitted from the Riyat, my heart, invoke the transcendental wisdom goddess. And then Rinpoche added this prayer where we ask, we put the dorje in front and we ask the wisdom beings to come here. So from our heart, light rays emanate and go to all the wisdom beings, Kurukulle, to our own guru, to the lineage masters, asking them to come here to this place to bless us. And so these light rays emanate, they go towards them. We invite all of them to come here and we recite the invocation. At the end of the invocation, we play the bell with the damaro. This is something antique that when you would invite someone, you would play an instrument. Even in the medieval times in Europe, when the kings would come, the musical instruments were played. When someone important would come, the more important the person, the more noise one would make. So if there's someone very important that should come, then actually we should start playing the trombone even the night before, because at the time there was no social media. So at the monastery, from the monastery at night, we start hearing the playing of the instruments that would go on all night long. You knew that something important or someone important was going to come. And then depending on the actual sound, it was a way to communicate if someone was coming, if someone was leaving. So this way, now we play, and when we say Om Vajasamaya Sa, we're actually inviting, and we imagine that the wisdom beings have come. Guru Buddha Kurukulle is in front of us, and then we prostrate, Namo Guru Bhye, Namo Shri Kurukulle Sapare Bhye, and then we make offerings Om to Kurukulle in front of us. In this case, there are two ways. One, they can be fast, so we don't play, or we can also play. So we have the wisdom beings in front. So what have we done? We've invited the wisdom beings, and at this point, the wisdom beings become inseparable from our commitment being, and the commitment being is us, our own body, speech, and mind. And so we do za, we do za, means the wisdom being comes towards us. Za, za is the syllable of to invoke. Hum, it absorbs into us. Bam, enters and becomes stable. Za, hum, bam, becomes stable within. Ho becomes inseparable. We become inseparable from the wisdom beings. So the commitment beings, us, and the wisdom beings, we become inseparable. And the mudra with our left hand looking up, the easiest way is this, this we do the heavy metal mudra. So with the right hand towards below, za, and then the opposite, hum, za, hum, bam. You unite in front of you, and then ho with the hugging mudra that represents the non-duality between us and the wisdom being. So we are no longer a mere visualization, but we come inseparable from the wisdom being. After this, we invite the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 Great Mothers to concede us the empowerment. Again, we imagine light rays from our heart that invite the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 Great Mothers with Pancha means 5. So where it says Om Pancha Kula Sapariware, and then we make the offerings to the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 Great Mothers. And after having made the offerings, we request initiation, empowerment, Deshin Shepatam. And we make the request, and the 5 Dhyani Buddhas and the 5 Great Mothers, they accept to confer us the empowerment. And as we do, as we say Vajra Bhairava Apisht Hum, as we do this, we imagine that the mothers take vases filled with nectar, and this nectar is poured over our heads. And then our body just fills with nectar, and we experience bliss. And the nectar overflows from our crown in the aspect of our own guru, in the aspect of Buddha Amitabha, representing our own guru. After this, then there's my body is absolutely, having said the empowerment is granted with the vases of nectar, my body is filled and all stains are purified. The excess vase water becomes Buddha Amitabha, adorning my crown. And with this, we complete the self-generation. Once we are generated in the aspect of Kurukulle, inseparable from the wisdom being, having received the empowerment. Now let's not get into details because it becomes really long. After this, then we make offerings to the self-generation. So we're making offerings to ourselves. The offerings that we make to ourselves as Kurukulle, it's not that the offerings are done to thank, because when we make offerings, it's also to help to cultivate respect and gratitude. But in this case, it's a way to generate bliss. So we imagine that from our heart, we open. So with the left hand in front and our right close to our body, we open up, and from our heart, these offering deities emanate, and they go out, and then they come back and make offerings to ourselves and reabsorbs in our heart. And you see that in the previous offerings, it was Om Kurukulle Sapariware Ahum. Sapariware means together with your entourage. Kurukulle together with the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the holy beings. In this case, is Kurukulle herself, which is us in the aspect of Kurukulle.
Omo Kurukulle aloke pratishthaye swaha. Omo Kurukulle gende pratishthaye swaha. Omo Kurukulle nevidye pratishthaye swaha. Omo Kurukulle shabda pratishthaye swaha.
And then there's the inner offering. And here, Rinpoche added this part of the text to remind us the importance of the visualization. From the letter Hung at my tongue arises a white, hollow, one-pointed vajra through which it's like a straw, with through which the essence of the inner offering is enjoyed and the exalted wisdom of great bliss is generated. And just to summarize, to simplify things, from whom comes out a straw, and with the straw we suck up the essence of the inner offering. It's a symbolic way of saying, more than visualizing an actual straw, what we can do, we do Om Kurukulle Risoha with the ring finger. You touch the inner offering. Remember when we made the inner offering before, we sprinkled it, but now since it's towards ourselves, you can do it like this. You can actually taste it, or you can also, a more educated way is you put in your ring finger into the with the ring finger, you touch the inner offering, and then you actually touch the middle of the palm of your hand, and then you can taste it from the palm of your hand, so that you then don't dirty the inner offering with your saliva. But what's important is to regenerate the feeling of bliss. After this, we make praises, and here we're remembering our qualities. We are Kurukulle. From inside more than from outside, and here we make praises. So these are these are also offerings. In reality, to be precise, these next verses, page 62, 63, these are parts of offerings. Here we have these are the 8 offering dakinis. After this, the actual praise starts. The actual praise on page 64, where we remember the qualities of Kurukulle, of our body, speech, and mind, and we praise these qualities. These are our own qualities, and after the praise, the classic gesture is in the first gesture. We do the Dorje Sorwa, which means the Vajra in front, and then we play the bell. So the Vajra in front, and then the bell, then the lotus turning mudra, and then the praying mudra. In the Guru Puja, when we make the prostrations, we do the same mudras, and in all sadhanas you do this series of 4. If you're doing the practice without your Vajran belt, you can do okay. This is like in self-healing with the Pamle Pema. It's the mudra of the lotus turning mudra. It's the lotus turning mudra that then ends with the prayer mudra. After this specific verse, there's it says, abandoning the mantra syllables, the sound and bindus. The bindus are drops. The energetic drops, let's call them like this, they are inconceivable. So abandoning the mantra syllables, the sound and bindus are inconceivable concerning the supreme great bliss itself, selflessness, the so-called non-inherent existence. In just a few words, the sound, the seed syllables, external appearance appears as such, but if we go to look, they don't exist in a solid, independent, autonomous way. So in a great state of bliss, I recognize that I too am empty of inherent existence, like all phenomena are. And in the description it says, one should stay in a meditative equipoise as much as possible on the exalted wisdom of non-inherent existence of the state of non-dual bliss and emptiness. So the main part of the practice is here, where in meditation one has an inner experience of bliss and emptiness, appearance, and in appearance is the complete appearance of a Kurukulle, young red body with an expression that is peaceful, but at the same time a little seductive, so almost slightly wrathful. More than wrathful, it's seductive, this ability to seduce our mind. So we're in this complete state of Kurukulle, with an inner state of pure bliss and emptiness and complete peace, and we stay like this for as long as we can. And in the sadhana it says here, it's not actually here in the translation, but it's in Tibetan. It says, when you're tired and meditating, then recite the mantra. So the main part of the practice is this state where one is Kurukulle in the external appearance and also as an inner experience. So first there are many details, and we can go, as you go deepen your experience with the practice, you can deepen the details. But let's remember our inner experience. So through the offerings we make to ourselves, we regenerate this bliss towards self, and we reach the apex with the inner offering, and with the inner offering and that bliss we realize the lack of inherent existence of phenomena and myself. So at this point I allow myself to imagine myself as Buddha. Actually I feel this inner state of joy, of wisdom, of peace, of harmony, of generosity, of bliss. I imagine these states these excellent states. And this is the most important part of the practice. Obviously, when you do the practice in a group, everyone has his own times, but once this is finished, then we start the recitation of the mantra. So we said preparation, the actual, so we said 5 parts. There's preparation to the self-generation, there's the self-generation, the recitation of the mantra, torma offerings, and the final conclusion. So we've done the preparation with the purification of the offerings and the inner offerings, the inviting of the merit fields, the making the offerings, the self-generation, and here we are Kurukulle outside and inside. After this, then we go to the next part. Given that I am Kurukulle, I need to act as such. So what does the Buddha do? He's not there taking sunshine. Once one has reached enlightenment, what do we do now? We act for the benefit of all beings. How does a Buddha act for the benefit of all beings? By adapting himself to the needs and abilities of all beings through the 4 types of generosity. So on a material level, giving material help. Secondly, giving emotional help, giving love. And the third is giving protection. The 4th level is giving dharma, giving the path towards enlightenment. And we simulate this with the recitation of the mantra. So first of all, we bless the mala, and the blessing of the mala is something we can do or not. On retreat, for example, you can bless the mala in the first session and then not do it in the other sessions, or you can bless the mala at the beginning of the retreat and not do it again, or you can do it in every session. So all ways are fine. And here we have the blessing of the mala. Just in a few words, we imagine that our mala dissolves into emptiness and arises of Buddha Amitabha, and we make offerings to Buddha Amitabha. We make the mantra of Buddha Amitabha. Buddha Amitabha represents pure speech, and then Buddha Amitabha dissolves into light and then reappears as the mala. This, in just a few words, is the blessings of the mala in this specific practice. After having done that, we start the actual mantra recitation. The mantra recitation is where we simulate the holy actions of a Buddha. And as we recite the mantra, Om Kurukulle Ri Soha, there are different aspects. One is the recitation shouldn't be done too loudly. It's said that the mantra should be, it's said that one should recite so the person sitting next to you can't hear it, but it shouldn't be so said so softly that you yourself can't hear it. It's under your breath. You're reciting the mantra. You hear it, but those next to you can't hear. It shouldn't be done too quickly so that you skip any syllables. And theoretically, shouldn't be done too slowly either. But the speed depends on each one. In the what's important in the recitation of the mantra, you shouldn't garble the syllables or eat the syllables. It's an easy mantra. There's certain mantras that are really harder. For example, the mantra Hayagriva is harder, isn't it? That first part, it seems like there are like 2 starting points. My feeling was that it's a little harder to get started. Instead, Om Kurukulle Riso is very fluid as a mantra. When you start reciting at the It's like the beginning of a mantra and the end to the end of the mantra and the beginning of the next one. It's like one home kurukure son kurukure so. So and you visualize normally we use the left hand only. It doesn't mean that I can't use the right hand, but we use the left hand because the left hand reminds us emptiness. It reminds us about the lack of inherent existence. So with the left hand at the height of our heart, one per mantra, you do one mala bead towards you. And as you do Onkuru Riso, what do we visualize? There's one main basic visualization and then others. The description here is a very specific visualization of Kurukulle, but I recommend before you do this one, first you should do this other visualization, which is common that we do in all practices. So at our heart, within our central channel, there is an 8-petaled lotus with a moon and sun disk, on top of a sun disk, there is the syllable ri, red in color. You can visualize the Tibetan or Sanskrit form, or even in phonetics, but a written syllable, what does it represent? A sound. So in reality, this syllable it's not a letter, it's a sound. So for me, we visualize a dot of light that vibrates with the sound of ri. Then we visualize, if you visualize also the written syllable, that's fine, but mainly focus on it being a dot of light that vibrates with the sound of ri, around which there's the mantra Om Kurukulle Ri Soha. That goes around. It goes around to the right, like a garland. And as it goes around clockwise, all right, red in color, light rays and nectar emanate also from the mantra garland. And they go to all the sentient beings. They go to the sentient beings, adapting to the needs of every being. So these lights transform into food for those who are hungry, medicine for those who are sick. So from the very coarse, the gross level needs to the most subtle of needs. So we practice the 4 types of generosity. So helping materially, and then bringing love and affection, and then protection. And then we bring the Dharma, helping beings develop love towards themselves, towards others, and the right view or the correct view of reality until they reach a state of perfect balance. So you can do this calmly, where you can visualize the different realms. You can, where it's hot, you can bring coolness. Those who are lonely, we're bringing. If you're lonely, you bring you bring company. So you adapt yourself to the needs of every being, and then little by little, the people, the beings reach states of peace and are free from their suffering, and then that light comes back, reabsorbs at our heart, and that mantra garland emanates, it does what it's supposed to do, and then reabsorbs back to our heart. So we're simulating sacred actions, and what we're doing also is familiarizing ourselves with love, compassion, equanimity, and joy. Because when we desire that others be happy, we're familiarizing ourselves with love. When we imagine that we want them to be free from suffering. We're familiarizing ourselves with compassion. When we are imagining this for everyone at the same time, we're familiarizing ourselves with equanimity. And when they are actually free from their suffering, we rejoice for we rejoice for their happiness. So if we do this during the recitation, we're number one simulating the actions of a Buddha, but we're also generating merits and familiarizing ourselves with the four immeasurables. Another visualization that is specific to Kurukulle is which has to do with the characteristic of seduction, of this power of influence. So we visualize, so from our heart, light rays emanate, the red lights. So from our heart, the light rays emanate. They go to all holy beings and sentient beings, and so patience, joy. Just we're imagining that we're able to take from them. We're incorporating, we're receiving from everyone all of qualities of patience and compassion, etc. We're not stealing anything from anyone. We're just incorporating all of these qualities, and then at the same time, these light rays go to all the holy beings and the sentient beings. We're directing our mind to a state of peace and joy and satisfaction, love, etc. So we imagine these red light rays that go to every holy being, even the sentient beings, and we take their qualities that come back towards us. They reabsorb into our hearts, and we generate those qualities. This is a visualization that is specific to Kurukulle. But my advice is to first do the first visualization. Then there's the recitation of the mantras of the actions. These two added by Lama Michel Rinpoche. So we have Om Kurukulle Risoha, and then Shanti for pacification, Aryu for of health and long life. Punya is increasing of qualities and merits. Pranya is wisdom. Washam means to develop influence or power. Maraya Pe is the strength of opposition, and Sarvasiddhi are the mundane and supramundane realizations, and Rakya protection. And then there's also Om Kurukulle Rim Hunha Adze Soha Ri Soa Hunha Adze Soa. So first you do in retreat, you do the 100,000 mantras of Kurukulle, and then 10,000 wisdom rain mantras, where we visualize from our hearts light rays go out from our heart, and then an emanation of every one of these holy beings. They come to us as like a wisdom rain mantra that just nourish our being. So normally when we do the retreat if you do the sadhana without the retreat, you don't recite this mantra. This mantra is recited at the end of the 100,000 done during a retreat. After which, then we do the mantra of purification of 100 syllables. We make offerings to Kurukulle to thank having been benefit to all beings, and then we make praises, and we've concluded the part of the recitation. After which, from page 72 to 96, It's the part called the Torma offerings, and Torma offerings is not an essential part of the sadhana. You can do it, like not. What's the main function of the Torma offering? Is requesting the blessings of Kurukulle to obtain realizations. So it has a specific important function, and during retreat we offer the Torma in the last session once a day. You could recite it every session, sure. There's no counter indication, but normally it's given. Normally we spend more time. More time is allotted to the recitation of the mantra, and the Torma offering is given in the fourth session. If you're doing the sadhana outside of a retreat, should you do the Torma offering? Yes, you should. If you don't, that's okay. There's an important part in the Torma offering, because in addition to making Torma offerings to Kurukulle herself, there's a part where we're offering to other beings, beings of the nature, so to create harmony with the environment. And this has a function, and you need to have your own experience about this. And this goes to the end, page 95, 94, 95. And then there is then the fifth part, which is the conclusion of the sadhana. What do we have in the conclusion? We have the dissolution and the final prayers of conclusion. So we are in the complete aspect of Kurukulle, the state of bliss. So we are Kurukulle, and before going to eat or doing our daily activities, we need to come back to this world. So in an instant, the whole mandala of Kurukulle dissolves, like when we fog up a window, and little by little it dissolves towards the center. So everything just dissolves towards the center. We, from our head to from our head down, from our toes up, we all dissolve into nothing. From this great luminous void, the so-called clear light, in an instant we arise once again. This universe, this world arises, and we find ourselves in this reality again. But we arise as Kurukulle, but with one face and two arms, not with four arms. But we arise with our divine pride. One tries to maintain that identity in between sessions, in one's interactions and daily actions. We try to keep that state of bliss and wisdom beyond the actual session. At our crown, we visualize a white Om, at our throat a red Ah, and our heart a blue Hum. So having the blessings of body, speech, and mind. And then we do the protection mantra, the protection of body, speech, and mind. Oma Guru Buddha Kurukulle Kaya Waka Chitta Sarva Rakya Rakya Ho Ri. And then we do our final dedications. As you see, it says first, second, and third the session go to page 102. That means that when you're on retreat, you can, in that first, second, and third session, you do a summary, and in the last session, you can do all of it. But given that they're just a few verses, we can recite all of them. Otherwise, we would recite only the first one and then jump. And on page 100, we have verses of auspiciousness that are part of final dedications. And remember that auspiciousness, the first verse makes reference to the guru, and then to the body, speech, and the fifth, the mind, and then the action of Kurukulle. So this means these verses of auspiciousness. What is auspicious? That the guru is present in our lives. That in our lives there is the presence of the body, the speech, and the mind, and the actions of Kurukulle. And if you're then, let's say, if you're doing this a little bit more quickly, you can jump to the last line. And with this, we conclude the sadhana. And at the end, there's this verse that Rinpoche added. The first verse was written and transmitted by Captain Trishan Dorje Chang, the master of Lama Ganchen. And the second verse, the last verse, was written on the occasion of the writing of this sadhana. And there's a connection to Europe because Rinpoche was actually in Switzerland when he wrote this, and in the end of the 1970s. This is written by Trisha Rinpoche. Has a beautiful melody, and we'll do this. So that first one, it was written by Trisha Rinpoche when he first came to Europe. He was in Switzerland at the end of the 70s, and then the very last was written by Lama Ganchen in occasion to this, when this sadhana was put together. So we have preparation, the actual preparation. We have the preparation for the self-generation, where we have purification of inner offerings, the generation of bliss, the purification of body and mind, external offerings, the generation of merit fields with the practice that we have prostrations, offerings, purifying negativities, rejoicing, generating bodhicitta, and committing ourselves to act for the benefit of others. And with this basis, we do the self-generation as Kurukulle, remembering that one of the most important keys of the self-generation is being able to gradually generate this feeling, this inner experience of simulating what it feels like to be a Buddha, to allow ourselves to set aside that identification that we have with the fear and anxiety, and we identify ourselves with this state of wisdom and love and joy and peace, etc. Because something is really important. We can't desire what we don't experience, and if we don't experience something, we don't put energy there. So it's really important to experience this state of this union of bliss and emptiness, this state of Buddhahood, this state of inner peace. Allow yourself to experience it, and then all the other external aspects, we train in concentration, etc. So we have preparation of the self-generation, the self-generation, the recitation of the mantra, the torma offerings, and the absorption and final dedications. Is that clear? These passages? What's important is that when we'll do the sadhana after, even if we recite it in Tibetan, if you recite in Tibetan, it doesn't change that much. I mean, obviously, it's much easier if you understand the words, so you understand certain words. But I invite you to look at the passages, read the translation, and and connect. I mean, the visualizations are quite simple. Okay, this is a self-generation. Here I'm making offerings. Um, Here I'm inviting the wisdom beings. Here's the absorption. Understand what we're doing in each step, and help that will help you have the awareness during the practice. And with this, it's a brief explanation of the sadhana. We haven't gone into the details of the states of consciousness to generate or the specific visualizations, but we have a general overview of the sadhana and we understand what we're doing. We allow ourselves to have this experience. We shouldn't have to have this feeling of of control or needing to understand everything. There's an aspect that's really beautiful of letting ourselves relax, letting ourselves connect with this energy of Kurukulle and even and really experience. And those who are a little bit more experienced or, technically and understand the passages within a sadhana, they can go deeper into different parts of the sadhana. Okay? One last thing. During a retreat, nyempa is the word used in Tibetan. There's the nyempa is the word that's more correct. It means a close retreat, creating it's approximation retreat, creating familiarity. So as we said this morning, when there's an empowerment, there's a presentation, and now it's up to us to nourish this relationship, to make friends, create the affection. So this one function of a retreat is to create closeness, not just with the practice itself, but with the wisdom being and with our own identity as Kurukulle. We create this familiarity. Just to give a direction, generally speaking, another name is Nerum. Lerum. Lerum means to be habilitated for the practice. There's so many the actual actions. Every sadhana, every practice then allows you to then access certain actions like fire pujas, etc. So in order to actually do these actions related to a specific practice, you need to have done the retreat. And so the reference point is to have done a retreat with the 4 sessions and have done the fire puja at the end. This is the minimum prerequisites to then actually have access to these actions. So if I do, if I do 8 days of retreat and I don't finish 100,000, am I going to hell? No. What happens if I don't finish 100,000? Just in a few words, you wouldn't be allowed. Let's say you wouldn't have access to do these other actions of Kurukulle, such as the fire puja. So there is the tradition of doing the 100,000 on retreat, which is really good to do, but if you don't have the time or the possibility, I think it's much more important. The quality is much more important than the quantity, because otherwise there's the danger. one sits down to do retreat and one feels anxiety, and then there's how many mantras did you do? It seems like a competition, you know, who is able to recite the mantras um, um, you know, more quickly. And people then say, oh, I finished my mantras, as if the burden has been lifted, or I finished my job. No, our job is not about accumulating mantras. Our job is to familiarize ourselves with the inner state of Kurukulle. The sadhana says when you're tired of meditating as Kurukulle in a state of bliss and emptiness, recite the mantras. So I invite you in these days, one, give importance, close attention towards other things. So those who will do the retreat that we begin this evening with the first session, I invite you, independently of whether you do every day and every session, try to not allow your own laziness. I don't know if I'm clear here. I said, try not to let your laziness of not doing all the sessions. I mean, I have a tendency of being extremely rigid. So normally, how are we supposed to do a retreat in a rigid way? Those who do a retreat, they do the first session. They do for the first session to the last, from the first day to the last day, and you don't start the recitation until everyone is present. You're not allowed to get up during sessions. I mean, the different rules, and there are some we will apply. I'll explain and we'll reply. I mean, this is the more rigid way of doing this, though. Wouldn't give the possibility to many people, because of work or family commitments, to take advantage of this time. So we've chosen. So we're giving the possibility to as many people as possible to participate. Minimum one session a day, better 3. But if you're not doing retreat, it's because you can't lose your job. So if you have commitments that you have to respect, otherwise one should put in the effort for this week. From the beginning of the day to evening, one should dedicate himself to the practice of Kurukulle. This is the essence, just in a few words. If we're living the freedom, those who want to participate in one session instead of 4, or to do 3 days instead of the whole time, but let's not let our laziness prevail. So in this absence of rigidity, don't let the laziness take up so much space. What's important too, that during retreat, we should try to be present, diminish our distractions. So for a week, if possible, turn your phones off. At least turn off social media. Do the minimum necessary for to cut off all the distractions. Well, it's called retreat because we're retreating from distractions. So, I'm not saying that we should take a vow of silence, but certainly don't say what's not necessary. Concentrate. Even outside session, you can recite mantras without counting them. Go walking in the woods. Go walking around the stupa. Look for places where you can take space. I remember Lama Lawen once, who in Milan, those who knew Lama Lawen, you have a clear image. It's marvelous, marvelous. One day I was walking, I was there in Milan. He said, sit down and have a cup of tea with me. And I said, Gela, I don't have time. And he said, you know, you will always have something to do. Sit down. And he said, you know, doing never ends. So I'm sure that if you push back a couple things to next week, um, you only have you'll only gain by creating this space. By creating this space to deepen your experience with this practice. For those who don't have this ability for various reasons, you try to incorporate the practice during sessions, outside sessions, where you can. So I just repeat, it's wonderful to accumulate the mantra. Also set that objective of reciting 100,000. If this is not possible, or if you don't reach that goal, let's try to recite mantras of quality and be present in the present moment, to not live it like a race, like a mantra race. I say this because from my experience, it's that this can happen, this level of anxiety. No, we count our mantras, but we try to do the visualizations well and really focus on the quality and not the quantity. This is it regarding this brief explanation of the sadhana. And now is a break. Those who are present here, I don't think that you will all do the retreat for a week. So the retreat itself will will take place in the top floor. So for the seating, let's say that I'd say that that inner circles will be dedicated to those who are planning on doing the entire retreat. Instead, if you can't follow the entire retreat, then please you can sit on the outer rows, let's say. There's a particular characteristic. It's said that in the practice of Kurukulle, that spiritual realizations come through mundane realizations. A little bit like saying we use a certain type of energy that's more mundane, more palpable, like a way to develop our more spiritual part of ourselves. I'm just trying to summarize. This is a specific characteristic of quality of Kurukulle, and that's why it's a practice that is very well suited to today. So using the energies that we use daily to direct ourselves to our spiritual path this is very well suited for us. I don't know if I'm being clear, but it's this characteristic of seduction, seducing our mind towards the Dharma. This is one of the greatest or main characteristics of Kurukulle.
Concho sumki ngodrup sol, concho sumki trashi shu.
Trascitele.
Perciò
So,
riprendiamo alle 8
8
con
o'clock,
i ritiri.
we will start in the retreat Gompa.
Dovremo fare l'accumulazione dello Tsog.
And now is the time to accumulate the Tsog first, actually.